have the huge pleasure of introducing and having this half an hour chat with Ida Telalbasic, who is Associate Professor at Loughborough University in the Institute for the Design Innovation. And she's also Program Director for an MSc in Service Design Innovation. She's also a visiting lecturer at Central St Martin, at Said School in Oxford, does research also and participates in work at Imperial College, and is running, I think is participating in something that she will be talking about briefly, an exceptionally interesting project in South Africa with the South African Innovation Support Program, where for the past 2 years, Ida has been involved in delivering a training program in Pretoria within this innovation support program with a mission to catalyze new businesses and foster the culture of local and regional entrepreneurship. So, good morning, Ida. It's a real pleasure. I know you rushed from one location to the next to get the good, a good sound, etc. So Ida decided to choose as topic as area in which to intervene, which is the exploring research field. And what are the new frontiers of research and practice in design? And while her statement, which you will have read maybe on the Facebook pages, was that she wanted to discuss how to address future crises and how to design strategies that could contribute to resilience. She will do this from the perspective of how design can participate in the creation of new forms of entrepreneurship. So we, as we prepared this half an hour together, we decided to go through a little bit of a journey, her intellectual journey over the past few years, and starting from, and I think it will be a very interesting journey to follow, because starting from her work on alternative currencies, through to a more system thinking service ecosystem that is manifested in a certain sense of the project she is involved with in South Africa, to a more speculative, more future-looking approach of how design can really contribute, as I was saying, to and provide value to new forms of entrepreneurship. I hope I do justice to your journey, Ida. So let's start with actually the first question. You know, you started off with alternative currencies, and that was actually part of your PhD at Politecnico di Milano in service design. So what were the big questions there?
Yeah, so having studied product service system design with dear Anna Meroni, I fell in love with service design and wanted to do a PhD under her supervision. And I spent 5 wonderful years in Milan, where I was learning about design, the power of design, the role of design, and especially being at the thesis research lab under the wings of Manzini and the family that I still consider to be part of. It was very interesting to explore further the power and the role of design in changing societal dynamics, or trying to push the paradigms, or trying to make positive change. And at the time when I was studying in Milan, we had the crisis of 2008. And my first thinking was, well, if we're using design to design health systems, if we're using design to inform policies, why aren't we using design to design our currency system? And obviously, I noticed a lot of early stage entrepreneurs who were struggling with setting up their businesses or having access to capital. And so working in the field of service design, I thought, well, actually, why can't we reconfigure or redesign new service models that enable entrepreneurs to access services through using complementary currencies? So this is where I started to dive deep into issues of debt and networks and circuits, and understanding the social values that determine the way in which we are positioned within these kind of monetary systems. And so the resulting conceptual framework that I developed throughout the PhD was a social currency that basically helped entrepreneurs within co-working spaces to access services from other peers and have this kind of community building approach to supporting them in the creation of their ventures.
So as we were discussing a couple of days ago, we and talking about alternative currencies, they seem to have lost a little bit of steam. There was a very powerful moment, Sardex in Sardinia in Italy, the Brixton pound, another. Well, obviously now we have Bitcoin and other currencies, but you decided to move away from this area, or to leave it in a certain sense, but it did provide a basis on which to build your next conceptual steps. Is that correct?
Yes, so just to maybe mention, obviously throughout my PhD, my case study collection really was quite comprehensive in terms of looking at these interesting and quite exciting cases from around the world, from developing emerging economies as well as the Western world. I think it was really interesting to see and learn what triggered them, what initiated them, where there was a distrust with local authorities or with the government, and where actually governments set up these voucher schemes or systems in place to support local communities of different sorts. I do still think that complementary currencies in many ways have potential, and I think it's where the social value lies, is what makes them most valuable. However, I think there's quite a hype over cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, just to name a few, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, that do bring doubt in terms of the use and the application and the purpose in how they're used, and whether their purposes are really for a social cause or not. So I think what I can highlight is that this experience definitely made me dive deep into more systemic thinking, and understanding systems theory, and understanding how, when we create these service ecosystems, what really happens, and how we as designers can actually create these relationships, how we can understand the roles and the interdependencies between actors within these kind of systems. And I guess where we're heading is basically the next research phase, which Absolutely. Has very much been as you mentioned, the research that we've been doing in Southern Africa. So a project that has been funded by the World Bank and supported by an organization in Finland called NIRAS, and also SISE, which is the Southern African Innovation Support Program, with whom we have been collaborating for the past 2 to 3 years. And with colleagues here at Loughborough, we have been basically developing a methodology that helps early stage entrepreneurs to map their local ecosystems. So obviously it's very important for them to understand who they have available and what roles these actors play within their immediate localized ecosystems, and how they can utilize these relationships or build new ones to foster and further catalyze their businesses. So the project that we've been working on is, as I said, it was a methodology to help them map these localized ecosystems, and it was also a way to help them build impact case studies that again further help them with attracting funding, or just again being able to show the impact that these wonderful enterprises have in the 5 countries in the Southern African region. So this was a very interesting evidence-based project that we're still working on. We're still working to collect the data now to create impact case studies for ourselves in understanding how this methodology has really helped or not. Where has it helped to catalyze, and where has it helped to train trainers to further disseminate and diffuse this knowledge within their local areas.
Yes, and may I ask, I mean, do you feel that as a designer, and in particular as a service designer, you are what are the elements that you are bringing that are to the methodology and the actual training and the approach that you feel are specific to the field, rather than, let's say, a policymaker or, let's say, a business expert, etc.? Do you feel there's something, and again, I'm thinking of our audience of students who often mention their interest in being involved in strategic thinking and strategic design. So what elements, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think you bring as a field, because it seems to be something that you're reflecting on, not only yourself but in your department and the center you are involved with?
I think it's a good question and something I often ask myself, because it's what do we bring to the field that's different and new compared to entrepreneurship studies or organizational studies or policy, as you've pointed out. I think with this concrete project, it's the service ecosystem, which as well as a research area is still an emerging one. And I think it's trying to understand ecosystems as service touch points, and using this knowledge that's coming from service design to apply it to a context where the context is entrepreneurship, but I think we're still using very much systems thinking, service design innovation, and all the different types of design tools, methods, and approaches to these projects to try and sensitize our partners, our entrepreneurs, to think more strategically. So for example, if they're mapping their ecosystem, it's not just about understanding the existing relationships, but what are the potential relationships that we can build? So how can we actually enter certain networks or niche parts of the ecosystem that are very influential? Maybe they're the hub landlords, as the ecosystem theories specify. So maybe they have certain powers or stage gate models that block or enable certain interactions to happen. So it's understanding that. So it's kind of having a macro view that I think is really helpful in this specific project. And I think that's what we bring to the table as designers. Yeah.
Is there one of the projects that you have been supporting, or of the startups that you have seen come through your program? Is there one that either because of its success or its failure, failures are good as well, that sticks to your mind as saying, okay, this is an example that I'm now using systematically when I want to think about and want to explain how design can take a systemic view in this field?
So I think my PhD research is one very dear to my heart, because it was something that I developed over the course of 3 years, and I worked with the Impact Hub in both Milan and London. And I think as well the connections to these different types of complementary currencies for me was quite fascinating, because that was trying to understand how design can contribute to this area, which is not quite a very usual combination. So I think it was very challenging at the same time, because not a lot of literature was available. So it was very much about paving the way in which design could position itself, and the way I could really try and demonstrate the value that design could bring to this type of thinking. And I think that project was, it has a lot of its challenges in many different ways, but I think it's an example. I would like to believe it's a good example of service design contributing to entrepreneurship.
Okay, thank you. And now, shall we open a little bit towards the future? So you've just launched or recently launched a special issue on value of design-driven entrepreneurship for the Design Journal. And as you mentioned the other day, it is probably one of the calls that has received the most responses in the last few years. So there's definitely a field there. There's definitely something going on. And I was just wondering if you could describe a little bit the call, etc., and then maybe we can lead on more of a macro reflection also on the crisis aspect.
Yes, for sure. So as you can see, I think there's been quite an interest in understanding the contribution of design to entrepreneurship from quite a few years back. And I think this issue is in a way pivotal, because it's really motivated by all these projects and thinking that have been informing my thinking about design. And I feel that though there is a lot in design management, that we are seeing a lot of interesting publications and examples of, for example, design thinking or strategic design supporting businesses in many different ways. And we can even see now consultancies publishing reports about the business value of design, or the design economy, or the service economy in which we live, especially here in the UK. It's about 70-80% is the service economy. So it's really interesting to see how service design is also being positioned more and more and reinforced, I think, strongly in many different ways. So I think we can definitely see a lot of examples of design contributing to entrepreneurship in a practical sense. We can see design supporting accelerator and incubator programs, as the project I've mentioned with the Southern African. This is again service design supporting ecosystem building and service ecosystem thinking. However, for the call, I think the main motivation was to see, well, what is going around the world and how can we actually theoretically create a foundation of the unique value that design brings to the so-called design-driven entrepreneurship. And so we're looking at, what do we mean by design-driven or design-led or design-centered, right? And what is the changing role of designers as well? So a lot of designers are becoming entrepreneurs. And what is the role of designers within startups? So what is the difference if we have a designer on the team or we don't have a designer on the team? Does that influence the success of the startup in different ways? And obviously we are also seeing this new role of chief design executives, right? And how they're transforming organizations. I'll take an example with 3M. Which is a huge, large multinational corporation, having a chief design executive fundamentally changing the organization and bringing design and innovation through on all different steps, all the way up the design ladder, so to speak. And it's really fascinating to see that design is also now taking center stage even in a leadership level. So with the issue, we are really trying to trigger these conversations, and I think really set the stage for an emerging research agenda that I hope will trigger a lot more conversations and a lot more capture, I think, the role that design is playing in enabling, activating, sustaining entrepreneurship in many different ways.
I'd like to sort of cycle back to the question of the crisis, which was a little bit our starting point, and also the uncertainty that is the theme of the day. And I'm just wondering, and I mean, and this is more of a chat around a very difficult topic. Do you actually see the fact that designers are increasingly involved, even in a managerial position? Initially, in the introduction, it was mentioned that designers are good, in a certain sense, at dealing with uncertainty. And I'm just wondering, are you seeing, what is the new forms of entrepreneurship, and do you actually see, an increasing role for designers because we are in such an uncertain situation at the moment? And so the new entrepreneurs as well, apart from the habitual, should I say, uncertainty of starting a business and not knowing if you'll be one of the 5 that will actually survive a few years. But you see what you mean. How do you think design can position itself with respect to this level of uncertainty, potential repeated crisis, etc.?
So yes, there is definitely some of the papers that we've received are looking at the topic of the difference in how designers and entrepreneurs approach risk, business, and all these things. And I think it's really interesting that designers do have this very creative, very risk-taking approach to businesses. And it's a question of, we do need both the creative and the rational side when doing business. And there's also an interest in how, which type of approach is necessary at which stage of development. Because in the early stages, we do need the creativity. We do need the sparks and the creativity and new ideas. But at the same time, we do also need to keep the business running and sustained. So I think it is about managing those two approaches. But to come back to your question of uncertainty as well, I think I also did research about resilience quite a lot with my PhD, and it was about understanding well, what type of design strategies can contribute to resilience? And what I found was, obviously we come back to systems thinking, we come back to understanding. Sorry, I'm just understanding that I have, but the light is gone. So it is about understanding the structural diversification. And I think one of the things that is important for businesses to understand, and I think this is where design can play a part, is, we're going to have new crises coming. Even with the 2008, what I understood from my research is that there's a certain kind of amplitude that occurs just as in nature and so in economic systems. There's always going to be busts and booms, right? So we need to be prepared that we are going to be actually experiencing a lot more crises in the near future, maybe even at an accelerated rate, more frequent rate. So what I would suggest for businesses is that they do need to consider, when they're building their businesses and their business plans and business models, to do account for crises and have strategies put in place that can help them understand, okay, if we do have a crisis, we have lack of capital, we have lack of access to resources, how can we find alternative ways? How can we diversify both our resources but also our offer to the clients? And I think this is going to be a key component that is going to differentiate whether businesses stay afloat or not.
Thank you. One more difficult question. I apologize putting you on the spot, but I mean, so much of design thinking, so much of the design strategy of the last 20 years, I would say, has been around putting humans at the center of the design process. The nature of the crises that we're looking to encounter in the next few years tend to be slightly of a bigger nature, in the sense that the crisis will not just be, the economic crisis will be one element, or the democratic crisis will be one element, because of the environmental crisis that we are going to be facing. And I'm just wondering again, how can, because you're taking this systemic view, which I find really interesting and challenging as a designer, do you think it will be you and as a field, we will be able, in a certain sense, to enlarge our scope so as to take those elements as well into our level of analysis and our level of design? And I'm not only talking about traditional, I say, design for sustainability. I would say really in this, at the light of this very complex level of uncertainty, how far can our system analysis go?
Yes, I think one of the things that I'm starting to realize is how can we actually get people to understand the systems thinking more? Because a lot of the ways in which our current systems operate is that people are still very fixed and working in silos, and they don't understand that what they do affects other people, because we are part of an ecosystem. So just to take a simple example, if we have a baker in our high street and they're working very well, and you immediately have another bakery shop open within 2 months, and then they're working both very well, so we have another 3 and 4 bakery shops open. And what ends up happening is that obviously healthy competition is good, but if we now have 5 bakery shops in 500 meters, none of them are going to work well. And I think this is the mindset that needs to change. It's about, well, how do we get people to understand that they are one component, one actor within a larger scope? And this is where the kind of collaboration and interactions become also important. Something that we probably lost but had a long while back, when relationships were stronger, when people within communities did work closely together. I think that is something that I'm seeing as a key challenge, and something that I think perhaps design could also help to visualize with its tools, with its approaches and methods, that people, even if you're just a baker within a one local ecosystem, what does that mean? How can you actually reach out? How can you collaborate? How can you help? And also in a crisis, how can we support other businesses to stay afloat? How can we actually ensure and, encourage that kind of collaborative behavior? And I think this is where design, in my view, has the potential. This is where design has that sensitivity to bring people around a common purpose. And if that common purpose is to stay afloat, is to support each other, as these complementary currency systems did, for example, they have these voucher schemes in Japan where people take care of each other's elderly in other parts of the city because their children are not there. So this kind of thinking, I hope, could support businesses in the near future and also change that perspective from a silo to a more collective one, I hope.
Okay. Unfortunately, I am unable to actually see if there are any questions in the chat, and I would ask somebody, because we have a private chat, and if there are any comments coming. Oh yes, now I see a few, but no, I'm not seeing any questions as yet. So I'll continue the pleasure of asking them myself. May I ask you, are you managing to integrate this systemic approach and your approach to entrepreneurship in your current program, teaching in the masters that you are running in Loughborough? Is there anything that this forward-looking view of design and entrepreneurship, crisis, etc.? Are you managing and to integrate it in your teaching, and in which way?
So yes, I'm currently teaching a module called Service Design and Strategy. And it is very strategic in the sense that it tries to get students to look at service cases and explore opportunities for innovation. So we get them to analyze in depth how that service works, what are the issues, how does it correspond or create value for the customer or not. And then we try and use strategies from innovation management to complement their thinking in understanding, well, if we were to improve this business, what would we do? How would we set out? How would we actually, position them on this matrix, but also bearing in mind the social innovation aspects, which I want to stress. I think in my work, it's always about not just service design for profit, but it's always service design for community-driven interests and so on. So I do believe that that's where the value and the role of design definitely sits in many different ways. And as of this coming year, we're launching a new service design innovation program, and we will also be having other modules that are looking as well at the systemic role of design in shaping future scenarios. So getting the students to think about, well, what can we imagine in our financial systems, in our healthcare, in education, I think also in work, which is going to be a very interesting one. How are we reshaping the way we work and the way we interact, the way you and I are having a conversation now online with so many other wonderful speakers around the world. So I think this is definitely going to be one of those modules, for example, where we will want to question collaborative services, interactions and experiences that we can create, which I think as well in retail is going to be very important now post-pandemic. How are shops going to still attract their customers in a time when everyone is so used to online shopping, for example, and so on and so on. So I think we'll be trying to tackle these bigger issues in the classroom, and I'm looking very much forward to that.
Okay, I think we literally have a minute left. I just wanted to ask you is there still time to send a paper for the special issue, or have the deadlines been met and closed?
Yes, I've been having a few people reach out and ask. So unfortunately, we've made the final selection. The editorial is in process, and it will be published in September of this year. So please do look out for that coming out in the Design Journal this autumn.
Well, I think we'll all be very curious to see, what papers have what your call has elicited, and what are the new experiments that are for. Well, listen, thank you so much, Ida. Thank you for rushing also to a very space.
No
this
problem.
was a very interesting conversation, and again, we hope to follow up in the future. And I know you're a close a friend and connection to the DESIS Lab and to POLIMI.
Definitely.
And an ongoing
the DESIS family.
The DESIS family is active.
Still stay strong.
Okay.
Thank you very
so
much, Stefana. Lovely to see you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.